Raise your horns high and let your spirit flow. It's the classic metal wrap-up show. Feel the rush, let the loudness grow. It's the classic metal wrap-up show.
'60s and your '70s. I mean, when I was a nipper, I thought I was middle-aged at 20, and I thought I was going to be dead by 30, you know? And if you'd come into the studio in 1987 and said, Niv, what you're recording right now is still going to be on the radio in 30, 40 years, I'd have looked at you and said, whatever it is you're taking, break it out and give me some too, because you are as high as a kite. You know, none of us foresaw this lasting as long as it did. And all power to that. Now, that as a preface is me personally, I'm not interested in paying the huge ticket prices to go and see a 60-year-old run around on a stage expressing angst that they're out to get me. Meantime, he lives on some of the best real estate in Malibu. No one's out to get you, Axel. You live in fucking Malibu up the hill.
No one's going to find you.
Yeah, I mean, you know, but he's in a box because a lot of that early Guns N' Roses was driven by conflict and contention. And it doesn't wear well to me to have somebody in their 60s try and do that. You know, it's like, yeah, no, not for me, no thanks. I always thought that the only people who should be playing music in their 60s and 70s were old black blues players and Pink Floyd.
Pink Floyd does it well.
Right.
Yeah.
Because their music doesn't have an age bracket. Floyd is kind of a timeless type of music.
Yeah. Exactly. There's a cerebral part to it that keeps it contemporary. We're all still talking about the same issues. Money is an even bigger issue today than it was in the 70s. Mm-hmm. That song is more relevant today with the fucking billionaires and assholes we've got running around trying to tell us how to live our lives than it had when it first came out.
Well, and it's that spirit that GNR, to me, embodied that made me excited as a young person to say there's these guys who are not going to go with the program and who were going to give you the middle finger. And that was what drew me to the band, that energy.
Well, that was one of my small contributions, Evil, was I was not go along, get along. I was not an established management company in Los Angeles. How did I end up managing Guns N' Roses? Because no one else would. Everybody said, fuck off. No, they're a disaster. I don't want to deal with them. And twice I said no, myself. I didn't want to deal with them. You know, I was working with this other band that I'd been with for years, and we were starting to get a shape and a form to it that made sense. And I was now going to have to deal with these fucking hellions. Are you out of your ever-loving fucking mind? You know? But there was a band meeting I went to. Very early on, I rode my motorbike up to the house they were in. There was a broken toilet by the front door, which I thought was an interesting ornament to have by the front door. And I went in, and only 2 fucking band members were there. And it was Slash and Izzy. And I promised I'd come and talk. I'll go with the flow. There's only 2 of them here. It's a little bit rude and disrespectful. And while I'm sitting at the table, Izzy does this.
No.
He is out. He'd obviously shot up just before I got there, and he just went out. So that left me with Slash. It was just the two of us for a band meeting. And that's when I started to get in, because I found Slash to be very smart, very articulate, and very charming. And that's when I started to look at the whole thing from a different perspective.
Real quick, I know Evil's a huge Kiss fan. I used to be I'm not like a
Oh,
reformed Kiss
God!
fan. But Paul Stanley claims that he was considered for production for Appetite. Is
Yes.
that, how accurate is that? And how did that go down?
It was just before I was involved, thank God. Because I'd have told Paul to go even faster than the band members did. But there were a couple of meetings, and let's just say the chemistry wasn't there. And I will tell you this, had I been there, there wouldn't have even been a meeting.
It would have been a no.
I'd have been no fucking way Paul Stanley's dealing with the band. Think again. As it was, one of the first pieces of housework I had to do was to dispense with Spencer Proffer, who was Quiet Riot's producer. And wrong. Tom was, he actually had the band, the tracks for that we put the phony audience on.
Live Like a Suicide.
Yeah, they were recorded at Pasha.
Ah, okay.
Tom was trying to cement a relationship with Spencer Proffer, and that was a total no. I went for a meeting there that Proffer didn't bother to turn up for and sent his assistant.
Now, blink, if you could blink. I don't want you to get into the mudslinging, but blink if you thought that Spencer was a shyster.
I didn't have any financial transactions with him, so I cannot make a first-person commentary on that.
All right, got you.
Suffice to say this. I went over to meet with Spencer Proffer. He didn't bother to show up. He sent his assistant. I got in my car, drove straight down to Geffen, walked into Zootout's office and said, "You fucking think again. That fucker is hitting the highway.
Right.
Let's get serious. Let's get a list up. Let's start thinking about what kind of producer we want, what kind of personal energy we want in this situation. This is a very volatile group of people. It's going to be a lot of hard work for me to get a sense of professionalism and work imbued in them. And I wanted a producer in here who's going to work within those criteria. And all I have to say is, Mike Klink, well, how many records did we sell?
Right.
Obviously, we got that one right, you know.
Right.
And the beauty about Mike was there were two things that appealed to me initially. One was that he worked with Neverson and was really good with guitar tones. That was obvious. And the other was, he'd worked with Michael Schenker. And if you can work with Michael Schenker, you might be able to work with Guns N' Roses.
Right.
Because Michael Schenker is a nightmare to work with. And he was a very soft personality. He wasn't going to be forceful. And his marching orders were really simple. Get it on tape. All right? Don't pretend you're... who was that gay English guy who did Queen?
Roy Thomas Baker.
Roy Thomas Baker.
Yeah, Roy Thomas, yeah.
Yeah. In other words, Mike, don't pretend to be Roy Thomas Baker. Don't fuck with the songs. Just get them on tape.
Right.
And he did that. And he was really patient. I mean, you got to be patient to record Axl doing vocals.
No.
He was really patient.
Right. Early on.
With Mike, he got completely sucked dry. By the time we came to this, he had no energy left whatsoever. That's why Mike didn't mix that time.
So, Alan, a couple of things. and then I'll have these guys ask questions. I'm asking too many questions. Uh, two-part deal. The Cult tour that GNR did. What kind of work did it take to make that happen? And what's your overall assessment on how they went over as far as that particular tour? And then two, there's a story behind the Ritz show and a band scarf. So there you go. There's a couple things.
All right, let's start with the cult. Bear in mind, I had Great White on an agency called Premier, and they were Premier by name and Premier by status. Frank Barcelona and Barbara Skydell were the cream. That's why they had The Who, they had Van Halen. I mean, they had, when you walked into their lobby and saw the Golden Platinum records, it was crushingly intimidating. All the greats that they had worked with, okay? And I managed to get them to work with Great White. Now, you'd think that common courtesy and manners would have been, I'd have picked up the phone to Barbara and said, I've got this other band, would you please be their agent? But I kind of sensed that Barbara might be uncomfortable with heroin-taking rapists, as they could be described in those early days. And there was one day I was walking into Records and Geffen himself was swanning down the staircase, and he came up to me, and David liked to intimidate people. So when I say he got in my face, I mean he was right in my fucking grill. Eyeball to eyeball. Who are you going to use as an agent? Because I'd already started to question. Tom had promised them the CAA, and I was already beginning to question that. And I looked at David and I said, David, the agent who gets me the tour I want. And I think that was the first moment when David registered in my mind that he might have a tiny little bit of respect for me. Because he stood there and looked at me for a moment and he said, exactly. And then went out the front door. Because that was the main criteria. What tour could I get? Because I had to get out of, my whole strategy was to get there first. England, touring America. I mean, we had LA Guns, we had Faster Pussycat. I mean, all those LA bands. And right before Christmas in '86, remember Music Connection? I don't know if it still exists.
I don't think it does, but I do remember it. Yeah.
All right. Last issue, December issue, 1986. They put 4 bands on the cover that they thought might do something the following year. And I'm looking at that and going, why are the 3 other bands there? That cover should be mine and mine alone for GNR. What did I learn from that? I'm in a race. I have got to make first impressions before they can make first impressions. And I've got to make sure that people know that my band is the real fucking thing. The others are fakers, as far as I'm concerned, just trying to be my band. So getting out of LA and getting to England first, I managed that, and getting to tour nationally with something that was sympathetic and empathetic was critical. I had to get out there. So basically what I did was, whichever one of you, CAA, Premier, ICM, whichever one of you gives me the tour I want, you get to be their agent. And there was actually a tour that I did want, and that was the Cult tour. Timing was perfect. I thought they'd be really good together. I thought that was a really good night of rock and roll. There was a problem. The car already had an opener. So I told Bill Elson, if you want to be the fucking agent, we get the tour. So we bumped the other band off and put GNR on. Elson flew
Now, who
out.
was who was the other band? Who was the
That's what
other
I was
band?
gonna ask.
Yeah.
No idea.
Oh, okay. Okay.
No idea. They know. But Elson got on a 747 because ICM based in New York and flew out to LAX, and I met him at the gate, and having power of attorney, I signed the band to ICM, and he gave me the first contracts for the tour, and then he turned around, got back on the same plane and flew back to New York. I mean, that impressed me. You know, he flies all the way to LA,
All the way across the
signs the papers, not interested
person.
in fucking around and going into town, having dinner or staying in a hotel. I'm going back to New York. I got work to do in the morning. And I went, okay, I'm impressed by this guy. He got it done. So that's how we got to Cal.
And real quick before we get into the scarf at the Ritz gig, overall assessment of that, because I saw that, and I'll tell you this: I think once you saw a band that explosive, I mean, I think anything after that's not going to match it. It's just not going to match it. And that was a perfect pairing because both bands were pretty hungry. I mean, the Cult had been around for a little bit, but they were coming off that Electric album.
They were peaking.
Yeah.
That to me is the moment when the Cult were peaking, was that tour, when the excitement and the interest was maximized, and they felt it, and they were doing great performances. And the other thing was, you know, lots of levels of consideration, but you know, I liked being around an English crew and an English band. All right, because they learn the hard way, going up and down the fucking M1 motorway all the time, playing shithole little dives, 30 miles here, 25 miles there, Birmingham, Sheffield, Liverpool, you know. They know how to put a show on because they've learned. Now, if I'm taking my band out on their first national tour, I want them to be with somebody who's going to be a little bit sympathetic towards them, but also be good teachers. Watch the Cult. Watch how they deal with their audience. I mean, you know, by the time we got to Houston, and after Houston, I think we just had New Orleans after that. Houston, I remember Axel coming up to me in the theater at soundcheck and doing his silly crazy dance and asking me, can I get away with this? Can I do this? And I go, if you're comfortable doing it, fucking do it. If that's how you feel like moving to the music that's being played behind you, then do that thing. You know, and a lot of people laugh and say, oh, we got it from the Monkees, you know, whatever. But Guns are on their first tour. That is an incredible learning curve, you know, because you can be kings of your club in your own town, but get out there to Moncton or the Warfield in San Francisco. These are people who don't know who the fuck you are. Learn how to grab them by the fucking collar.
Right. Well, see, you mentioned the dance. Were you familiar with Richard Black from Shark Island? Because there was footage of him and Axel basically doing the exact same dance, and Richard claims that you know, Axel
Why would
swiped it.
Come on, Ruben, think. Why would I ever acknowledge or go and see a band called Shark Island when I've been working a band called Great White since 1982? Shark fucking Island?
My
fucking
apologies.
go to your island. You know, my attitude is, Shark fucking Island, hit the fucking beach. Take the tide going out.
My apologies. Well, I guess we'll move on to the scarf incident. You know, they're at that Ritz gig, because there's a cool story that you had behind that, I think.
That wasn't a cool story. It was a pain in the fucking ass.
Well, it was cool for me.
I mean, the Ritz was packed. And by the way, how much do you think the ticket was for that night?
$16.50.
That's a fucking good guess. It was actually $13.50.
Well, I went to a lot of shows back then. I mean, they were $19.50 to go to the Memorial Coliseum in Portland, Oregon. I couldn't tell you how many shows I went to, so I good guess.
Yeah. Well, the place was packed. And originally it was going to be just Great White, and MTV were going to film it and put it on air. And it was part of an apology because they had done fuck all work on Rock Me, which was a monster radio hit. And they did nothing for 6 months on GNR. And Kennelly said, let me make it up to you. We'll film Great White out here at the Ritz. And I said, well, that's fucking good, but I want the opening band as well. And we'll film them as well. And Kennelly went, yeah, okay, you can have the opening band as well. And of course, I'm thinking, I want GNR on there. And I had a little personal ambition. Great White and Guns N' Roses played together at the Santa Monica Civic around about Thanksgiving. I wanted them to play together in New York, and I hoped to have them play together in London. I just thought it would be nice for my two bands to play together on the same night in those three major music cities. I just thought that would be cool. So anyway, it was a Great White night. They were the headliner, and by the time we got to, was it end of February, Ruben?
That sounds about right. I mean, it was in winter.
Yeah. Well, by the time we got there, the buzz on GNR was starting to go in the industry, and everybody was at the fucking gig. Lots of faces, lots of executives. It was a pain in my ass because I'm trying to be charming and say hello to everybody. And then a tech comes and says, we've got a problem, Axel can't get a scarf. And I'm thinking, I'm trying to be a host here to the entire fucking New York music bit. And now you come and tell me that I've got to go and find a fucking scarf for Axel. So I went backstage and Axel was, he was just having his nerves. And he looked at me, he said, you know what kind of scarf I like, can you go find me one? So I went out to the fucking audience and I found a scarf that would look likely, and I took it off the head of the person and I paid him for it and took it back, and that's the scarf that Axel wore. But the other thing about that night is I sat down with Great White and I said, what's the fucking rule? Be a hard act to follow instead of following a hard act. Because I read the room and I realized that that room was probably 60% there for GNR. So Great White went out there and played a fucking blinder. They were awesome that night. There's a version of Since I've Been Loving You that just melts the wall. Slash even came running into the dressing room when they came off stage and went, fuckers, how are we supposed to follow that? Well, go watch the video. To me, if anybody says, what was Guns N' Roses all about? I go and watch the footage from, what was the name of the place again?
The Ritz.
The Ritz, yeah. Go watch the Ritz footage.
And that really that really captured the band, though. I mean, that's exactly how I recall them supporting the Cult. I mean, oof, awesome.
That was it. And of course, Axel loved it because he fucking hated that I had a long-term relationship with somebody else because he couldn't control or own me.
Right.
But he was really happy that I made Guns N' Roses. Guns N' Roses close and Great White Open.
Right.
You know,
Right.
so when he's strutting on that stage, that's part of the reason why.
Right. Well, how I don't know. Maybe we could sneak in a couple more questions. We had you for an hour. We're creeping on like an hour and a half.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
so I
Where
don't
do you
know.
put,
Maybe Andrew has a question. I mean, he's been sitting there just listening attentively. I mean, he's listening to every word you're saying there, Alan.
I'm in class, so I'm just like you said. I'm listening.
where does this go, guys? Where do you put it up?
Rumble.
This will go on
Rumble?
Rumble. Yeah,
Would
it's
you
another
would you
platform.
be would you be a darling and send me a link when you post it?
We'll get it. Evil uploads and Andrew uploads. I think I don't upload any of this stuff, but we'll get you a link. We'll get you a link.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Andrew, you got a question?
Oh, well, pretty much.
You guys have any
everything
questions or anything?
I already asked.
Oh, he's done.
Well,
What about
I
Evil?
have,
You got anything?
well, I've always
I
heard these rumors that there was a large sum of money spent in a 12-month or approximate period that Adler was trying to get those drums to Civil War and some other tracks. I think Civil War is the only one he got done. Was there anything else that you're aware of that he actually finished? And how painful was that for you to have to eventually pull the plug and say this is not going to happen?
One of the things about management is your function is to minimize the impact of the crisis. Because with rock and roll bands, you're going to have a fucking crisis almost every day. If I ever went home thinking I'd had a good day, then I knew there was a phone call that I'd yet to return, because every day was a motherfucker. Right? So with management, crisis management is the perfect term. So yes, it's painful, but you evaluate the circumstance with, we've spent what, almost 2 years trying to get this follow-up done.
Right.
How much longer do we spend? What condition is he in? Are we going to be able to work around him? I mean, there was one day, talk about bizarre. I'm a huge fan of this guy. But we had an intervention at Stephen's house. And it was myself, Doug Goldstein, Bob Timmons,
Oh yeah.
who was the drug counselor to the Stars,
Yeah.
and this black dude.
Hmm.
And I'm sitting there looking at the black dude, and I'm introduced, and I go, I didn't hear that right. And I'm looking at him and going, holy fuck, that is Sly Stone.
Oh wow.
Or Sly and the Family Stone.
Stone,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, fucking brilliant records they made back in the 70s and late 60s. And I'm sitting there, and half of my head is, we have got to get this across to Stephen that this is serious. You've got to get a control. We've taken you to rehabs, we've done this, we've done that, we've done everything we can. We can fight the fucking battles with you, but you motherfucker, you've got to win the war. And that is your mental thing you've got to go through. And the other half of my brain is, I can't believe I'm sitting in a living room with Sly Stone.
Sly Stone.
But that's fucking Sly Stone.
Yeah.
Do I tell him how much I fucking love his music? Do I play it cool? Do I ask for an autograph? And I'm totally split in this circumstance of serious for Stephen. That's fucking Sly. What the fuck? So anyway, for me, the final conversation was with Slash, because they were childhood friends. And I sat with Slash and I said, listen, because I knew Axl wanted to get rid of him. Duff had taken himself out of the equation because he didn't want to deal with it. Izzy had taken himself out of the equation because he didn't want to deal with it. And I said to Slash, he's your friend. Are we ever going to get something done? Or is it beyond repair? What is your analysis? And Slash said, I think he's got to go. So when Slash said, I think he's got to go, I went, okay, well, now I know what I have to do. You know, I know what's next. I didn't realize at the time what a profound crack it would be. You know, I started to realize that when we started auditioning drummers. I mean, you know, Martin Chambers from the Pretenders came in and sat in one day, and I'm sitting there and going, God, this is terrible. You know, and he's a big star in my eyes, but it was tough. It was really tough. But as I said before, I'd signed a contract with 5 individuals collectively known as Guns N' Roses. Therefore, my responsibility is to the whole, not the one or the two. My responsibility is to the whole. I have to keep this thing working. I have to keep this thing moving. And if that means Stevie's got to go, well, Slash said he's got to go. So, okay. Let's go find a drummer who can play Coma.
Or Locomotive.
Or Locomotive. Yeah. Right. Cool. Well, I was just thinking of something there, Alan. I mean, as the book's release creeps up, I don't think it's not one of it. I pitch you an idea because you were instrumental in all the various different covers you selected for Great White. I almost think we should pull you back close to the book release and do our top 5 covers that you've selected for Great White. Whether it's on studio or B-sides or what, I don't know.
Or what about how about an album versus album with Great White?
Well,
Album versus
I'll
album.
tell you, with the Great White covers, they're a little bit hit and miss. The first one I really liked. God forbid me for forgetting the photographer, but he used to do all the punk bands. And there was a certain punk approach to the imaging, because if you remember, you couldn't see anybody's face on the
Right.
cover.
Right.
You had to turn it round. And it was like you know, especially later when everybody was big haired and on the cover and lipstick or something, I really liked that approach of, you want to know who we are? Do a little bit of work, at least turn the cover round.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and we're trying to sell ourselves on looks. And there's a little bit of mystery and mystique in the fact of, why don't they show their faces? You know, so that was the thinking there. And with the EMI record, how can I not just do a black cover when the band's called Great White? I mean, that's just so obviously necessary. Band's called Great White, here's a black cover. You know,
Right.
bit of humor. With Once Bitten and Twice Shy, there was always the intention, once we decided to use Once Bitten, that the follow-up would be Twice Shy, because that was just a gift of marketing with a band that's basically new coming out on Capitol. And you want people to be able to follow from this record to that record, Once Bitten, Twice Shy. It was a gift. And there was a song that we could do that tied in. And a lot of that material was about negative interpersonal relationships with women. And that was part of the, who's the shark? Is she the shark, or is the shark the shark? And then we had the 2 girls on the other one, because where I was going with that is, The older girl is obviously sophisticated. She's got the heavy, expensive jewelry on. The younger girl just has shark's teeth. Older girl is going to teach the younger girl how to play the guys in this material world. So that was the once bitten, twice shy.
Right.
With Hooked, I made a really bad mistake, which I regret. On Hooked, with the girl coming out on a huge giant hook. And by the way, guys, I got to tell you, we constructed that pool on the second floor of a warehouse, not knowing if the floor would collapse. And we had that huge giant hook made, and she was stark fucking naked through the entire shoot. And she'd come and stand next to me, and we'd talk, and I am doing my utmost to be a gentleman. Where do I look? What? And she's just happy as hell because she knew what she was fucking cooking my brain, but she was naked the whole time she was doing that thing. Where I made the mistake is I should have taken her down to the beach, down to a pier where the fishing boats come in. I should have hung Jack Russell up upside down like a caught piece of fish, and had her in wading boots and a fishing rod, so that people would get the joke. I didn't deliver the punch. I thought the whole thing was obvious, I think my favorite cover of all is Sail Away. Psycho City's good. That was a photograph I took of a motel just down the road from where I live. And it spoke to Psycho City, and it spoke to people going to dark, devious places to do dark, devious things, which is Psycho City. With Sail Away, we use the Jericho painting that hangs in the Musée d'Orsay in Paris. And to me, it is the most amazing allegory for our human condition. We're adrift at sea. We're almost in a permanent state of shipwreck, the way this fucking world works. On the horizon, if you look very carefully, there's a tiny little sail. Now, is that rescue? A good thing's going to come? Or is it going in the other direction and you're going to die in the water? I mean, it's an amazing... The sad thing about that painting is that Jericho used bitumen to accentuate the blacks, make the blacks blacker, and the bitumen is eating the canvas. So eventually that painting is going to be no more, which is kind of ironic when you think about what it says and what it says. Yeah. And of course, the other thing is that cover relates exactly to the lyrical content of Sail Away. And that song was inspired by a book called The History of the World in 10.5 Chapters by a guy called Julian Barnes. And the painting is actually, there's a fold out of the painting actually in that book. But if you're a reader, that is a book I strongly recommend. The History of the World in 10.5 Chapters. And that inspired the song Sail Away. So it was a circle.
Nice. Wow. Lots of great stuff. And Sail Away, great album. I think you've referred to that as the Eagles record. Living in the USA, killer tune on there. We should close things out with a Jack story. which there's a cool story behind the voicemail in Psycho City. If you want to share that story with us, and we'll wrap up, and then we'll give you a chance to kind of plug the upcoming book.
Well, it's not actually a Jack story.
Oh, it was you, wasn't it? Was it you?
No, it's not a Jack story. Are you referring to the fact that one Monday morning I went into my office?
Was the voicemail?
Well, we didn't have voicemail then. It was a message on a
Message.
message machine. And it was a death threat. Somebody threatening to blow somebody's brains out, my brains. You know, Monday mornings can be tough enough. And you get into your office and your assistant plays you this and you go, who the fuck did I piss off that they're going to kill me? What the fuck is going on? Axel wouldn't do that. He'd just not talk to me. All right, so it's not him. Who the fuck is it? And it was disquieting. I mean, I used to keep a pistol grip pump action shotgun in the cupboard of my office because there was one day that my assistant got mugged at the end of the driveway. You know, the area was a little bit sketchy. So a death threat, you took it on board, but you're also really fucking frustrated. How about leaving me a telephone number, motherfucker? How about telling me who you are and we'll discuss this on my terms? You know? An anonymous voice. And we were working on the album Psycho City at the time, and we had the track Psycho City, and I went, I know how I'm going to get this motherfucker back. I'm going to put it into the track. In fact, we're going to open the record with this, because this absolutely speaks to all the disquiet and discomfort that we're all feeling living in this town at this moment. You know, it wasn't that long ago that we had the fucking riots. I mean, there was a zeitgeist was changing. It wasn't peace and love, man. There was a nasty edge in the air. So I put it on the track. Did eventually find out who it was, but that's another story. It's in the book.
Yeah, it's in the book. Here's one. If we're going to close out with Jack, there was a interesting tale you told about. I think when Jack approached you and said, "Why is this black guy singing Led Zeppelin?" That's awesome. I think it was Willie Dixon, wasn't it?
It's a little unfair.
But no, I'm not to trash the guy. I thought it was kind of innocent, right?
Let me back it up.
Okay, I'll back it up.
All right. Now, as cool as you guys look, and as rock and roll as you guys look, let me suggest something. If it weren't for us teabags, if it weren't for us Brits, you'd still be listening to Pat Boone.
That's probably true.
It
Okay.
is.
So
Without the
there's
Beatles
me-
and the Stones.
Yeah, exactly. Well done. That's me throwing down the gauntlet and saying, you know, there's an element of truth that the Brits brought blues back to America. There's some truth in that. And it's always interested me that, let me explain it this way. The commercial imperative of the American record business is to get everyone to buy one record, because it's a big continent. So everything is designed to get everyone to want the one record. Okay? Little England, tiny little fucking England, you can drive from one end to the other in 4 or 5 hours. The imperative was the opposite. The imperative was to get one person to buy every record. So in England, there was a much greater sense of not being tied to one particular style of music. That the newspapers, we had Sounds, Enemy, and Melody Maker, that were weekly music newspapers. They would cover a broad scape of music because the idea was to promote eclecticism so that you would get somebody to have incredible shelving behind Evil here, you know, lots and lots of music. So that's why the English, at a certain period of time, knew more about American music than Americans did. Okay, because the sense of musical promotion in England was that's everything. Whereas in the USA, it's here's the one record that we want to manufacture and distribute and drive all over the continent. So there's a little bit of English arrogance. We know it better than you do, mate, don't we? And Led Zeppelin were notorious for stealing shit and claiming they wrote it. I think you can name anywhere between 8 and 12 tracks where they lifted it and put their name on it. It was one day I was sitting with Mark Kendall and Jack Russell, and I thought, you know, I don't think they know this. I should play it for them. And I put this record on, and Kendall looks at Jack, and Jack looks at Kendall, and they look at each other, and they kind of scrunch their faces and look quizzical and look at each other. Finally, Jack turns around to me and he goes, Niv, why is this old black man trying to play Led Zeppelin? And the album I was playing is called I Am the Blues by Willie Dixon. And they were hearing Zeppelin riff after Zeppelin riff. And I go, what the fuck? This old guy's doing it in this old-fashioned way. They had no idea who Willie Dixon was.
Right. And again, hard to believe now, but in a way, it's kind of shows kind of like you were just describing, you know, that kind of, you know, you only know what you've been exposed to or listened to.
And this is why Evil's going to give a hot take. I don't appreciate Zeppelin at times because of that reason. I appreciated Cream and Clapton and Jack Bruce more because they openly told you they were covering the old blues guys, and this is who did the song.
Right. It's true.
I've got one simple response to that, Evil. When I first heard Zeppelin 1, I wanted to get 2 pieces of wood and beat the bed in my dormitory at school. I fucking loved the way it sounded and felt. I didn't care where it came from. It just felt so good and so right to me. And I wanted to beat my bed with 2 pieces of stick. To this day, if the ship is sinking and you can only take one Zeppelin record with you, it's Zeppelin 1. Yep. It is brilliant.
Yeah. Nice.
I would substitute a GNR album, but that's because that's my era.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I've got a lot of GNR that's still in my head, so you know, I don't need much reminding of it.
Don't need more.
You know, and of course, if you're taking a GNR catalog with you, you've got less records. It's what, one album and an EP almost.
Sure. Yeah. Pretty much. Yeah.
I was actually going to ask you that. If you had stayed management, would you have, I know your idea was to have the 2 albums. At any point, did you think just hold off on these 6 songs for the 3rd album if we can get there?
No, I'll tell you exactly where my head was at. It was, thank fucking God, at last, we're going to be putting out a record. All right. I was not happy about Lies. It was a bridge. It was a so-so. It had some good material on it. It wasn't a purely honest offering in my book. But I was so fucking really, and you know, we started this exercise. Can you make one good record out of Use Your Illusion? And as I said, you know, I was terrified of it being a double album because I thought it would get slammed by the critics. And if we spread it over 2, we could probably make it look better than it really was. But I was in such relief that we'd finally got to a point we were putting out a record, because Now it was time to go and own the world, to just go and play everywhere. That's where my head was at. We are going to Australia, we're going back to Japan, we're going to New Zealand, we're going to Germany. For all I know, we might even get to India, but we're going everywhere to play everywhere. And I'll worry about another record in 3 years' time.
Yeah.
Nice.
What I thought was, I see the next 2 years being on the road, and then, for all I know, we might take a year off, let everybody go home, have a different kind of life, maybe have some family time, count your money in the bank, learn how to not lose it all, and maybe take a year off. And again, no idea is original or brilliant, but one band who were genius in doing that was ZZ Top, who got to a certain point and then said, we're taking time off. And they went away for a year. And then when they came back, they had long beards and a flying car.
Right.
Fucking genius.
Yeah.
Fucking genius. I love that fucking band.
Nice.
Well, I definitely felt the period from Appetite to Illusion. It was kind of like, for me as a person, it was like, here they are in the Deadpool. Here's GNR Lies, which is like it's like an appetizer. It's like keeping my interest here. And then I remember somewhere
Yeah.
during that period is when I saw the Ritz, and I thought, oh well, here's something to chew on. They're live at the Ritz. This is a cool video. I like this. And then I was like, I was too young to go at midnight when the Illusion albums came out. So I showed up the next morning, first thing in the morning, and grabbed both albums. And I have the poster somewhere. I have an original Use Your Illusion poster that I bought with the albums that day. Someone in the
I only have one poster left. Most of the shit I got rid of because I realized that you start to in a museum and most of the shit just collects dust and it starts to be ridiculous. This is not house decor. I'm not living in a fucking... I don't have a single gold or platinum record left.
wow.
They're all gone. The ones that weren't stolen, I just gave away.
Hmm.
In the garage in Prescott Valley, I have one poster that I've held on to. And it was the poster that we put up when we went to and toured England as a headliner. And we did 5 dates. And it was the poster that we put up for playing the Hammersmith Odeon. And it is the only one left in the world.
Wow.
But I still have that poster.
Oh, nice. Well,
we thank you for coming on, Alan.
yeah, thanks so much.
Well,
You better
I'm sure
plug
you
the
guys-
book. Plug the book again, the
Yes,
title,
tell us.
and when it's set for release. And yeah, I mean, we'll hit you up again. Maybe we can have another kind of. Maybe you could do a reading. How about that? You know.
I would be very grateful if you would, if we could do a little something around the time when the book comes out at the end
Sure.
of June, so that we could remind everybody that it's out. And it's called Sound and Fury. It is not a Guns N' Roses book. It's not really an Alan Niven book. It's not really a Great White book. It's a book of rock and roll stories. I am not a fan of rock and roll books because they all have the same story arc, only the names change. And the last thing I wanted to do was a chronological personal history. And I finally realized that I am just an old jukebox now. And I sit in the corner of the kitchen, and if somebody pours me a glass of port, I'll try and remember a story to tell. And then they may pour me another port, and I may tell another story. And the light bulb went on and said, that's the fucking book. Just stories.
Yeah.
People can figure out who's who and what they're doing just from the stories.
Nice.
That's going to be awesome.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Alan. We sucked up a
Well,
little bit more out of your evening, but it was good. I
Oh,
hope it sounds like you thought it was good. So, we'll chat
well,
again.
it's Sunday. It felt like just sitting with pals and talking about some stuff. No big deal. And I thank you, all three of you,
Yeah.
for your hospitality.
Hey, thanks so much, Alan.
Absolutely, anytime.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk soon, and
All right, good.
take care of the critters.
Yeah, you
Yes.
take care of the critters too.
Yeah, I know
All
I
right,
am.
guys, have a good one. Have a good
Yeah,
night.
take
All right.
care.
Good.
Yeah.
Awesome, Rob.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Raise your horns high.